on page 63, second last paragraph. We ran through the third step prayer last week. Jim, Bill and I fleshed it out, we unpacked it, and now we are going to launch. There's quite a few timeline references here on a vigorous course of action. So strap on your seatbelts and let's see if we can get through step 4 before the end of the year. Bill Swan, can I let you run with this and I'll jump in through the evening? I'm doing this with you because I've done step 3 and step 4 stuff with you before, and it's always super powerful, my brother. So the floor is yours.
Want me to do the reading? Is that right?
Yeah.
Where'd you say we were at? We did the prayer?
Yeah, we did. So it's 63, second last paragraph. You read, you comment, and I'll jump in.
Okay. And that's, if they did the prayer with us, why would they be back this week? They gave their will and life to God. Doesn't he take care of them from there? No, because it's only a decision. It's all we have made. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. Notice I say this was only a beginning. And you know how Nadia likes to cross-reference in the book. She's got a lot more than me. But if we go back to chapter 3, we hear about a friend of ours by the name of Jim. Pretend like I've done this before, Nadia. Let us turn to page 35. First example, and they're talking about the insanity that precedes the first drink. If I could turn my will and my life over to God, say a prayer, and be changed in the twinkling of an eye, then you would think that the allergy would either be eradicated or I would be restored to sanity. Remember that step 2, the 12 steps as we talk about and read them at a meeting and how it works, and you see on the window shades at every meeting, is a description of the action taken. We're getting into the directions on how to take the actions that they described in the window shades, or in the narrative, if you will. And what it's telling us is our good friend Jim made a beginning. Jim, if you recall, had lost a car dealership through drinking, and his wife threw him out, or he was in the hospital. Next thing you know, he comes in contact with us. He makes a beginning. And here's probably the worst thing that happened to Jim, which we don't talk about a lot. He was reassembled with his family, which means he's back in the big bed. And now he went to work. Whether or not he owns the dealership, it doesn't matter. He's got a job. So 2 of the things that drive a lot of people to the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the liver, the lover, legal, employment, or the wife, he got 2 out of them back, and those are the 2 that he almost lost through drinking. So he made a beginning, and guess what? That was found himself drunk and back in touch with the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. So you can say a prayer at the altar. You can go to Dr. Bob's house, which I've done on many occasions. I've said the prayer. I've said it with saints. I've said it with conference speakers. And me saying the prayer is nothing more than expressing an idea. Without reservation means I'm going to proceed on the path with action. Go ahead, now, just say something.
You're right. I love bouncing around the book. That was on page 35, the third paragraph, where we were talking about Jim, who just made a beginning. So he kept coming to the meetings, going 1, 2, 3. Yes, I'm an alcoholic. Yes, I think God can do this for me. All right, I'll hand over my life and I'll do the third step prayer with you guys. And then he leaves because there's some rigorous honesty on its way. And that stuff does not come naturally to an alcoholic of my type. I think I'm in a room with similar with kin. Let's have a look. I want to have a look at some of the words here. We found it very desirable to take this step. They're talking about that third step prayer with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. I would imagine they're talking about a sponsor there. They're talking about someone in the fellowship who had perhaps taken a step or two ahead of them. But I love this. It is better to meet God alone than with someone who might understand. Like, that's a divine appointment, guys. We get to schedule a divine appointment with God in our Google Calendar. That's pretty cool. And it says here the wording was, of course, quite optional. So I don't know, like when I was in high school and we did Shakespeare, the these, the thous, the thines, and the thous, whatever, that stuff really put me off some incredible writing of our times, and that was Shakespeare. This is also incredible writing. So even if it's just a prayer that says, God, help me, less of me, more of you, less of me, more of you, God. If that's all you can utter, and if that's all you can manage, that's a beginning, and it's a beautiful, powerful beginning, because it goes on to say that it needs to be said without reservation. What is reservation? Doubt or hesitation. Like, you got to do it with like gusto, meaning it, right? And then, if honestly and humbly made, the effect was sometimes a very great one. And I'm sure there's a couple of hands that can go up in this room with a powerful step 3 prayer. And it's many times. We take that prayer many times, but often than not, it is a powerful experience when we do take it, because we realize that left to our own devices, our minds, if you went through chapter 3, more about alcoholism thoroughly, our minds hijack us. And the puppet masters in town, we need God. Right, here we go.
Here we go. And why might we have a very great effect at this point? In chapter 3, it says we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. I know we don't use the word surrender in the book, and I don't know why so many of us have to say that. Maybe the word wasn't invented till 1940. I don't know. But what we're doing is we're giving up, we're relinquishing part of our ability to overcome a power that's beyond our control. In chapter 4, it said in the preceding chapters, we have learned something of alcoholism. Now we have this twofold disease that's ultimately going to destroy us. And now we need to concede to a spiritual experience if we're going to live, not easy alternatives. Not because we're stupid, but we can't imagine life with or without alcohol. It tells us that in the Vision for You, chapter 11, for those just tuning in, beginning on page 151. The reason I know that was my favorite drink, and it had something to do with rum, but not today. At any rate, something's happened where we're giving up a whole bunch of self. And as we've discovered before, and it talks about it in the 12 and 12, which is not the instructions for the step, it's a lot of great information. And it tells us that we can have faith all we want and still block the entry of God. When you start to give up some of self, when you're willing to relinquish control of your life, which is what the last 3 pages, the instructions for step 3, do not tell me what God's will is, any more than step 2 restores me to sanity. And sometimes there's confusion there. I don't have the spiritual awakening at step 3, although I may have an experience with this power. That comes later on in the steps. And I'm not restored to sanity. There's just a possibility I may be at step 2. And all of a sudden, we spend 3 pages talking about the necessity to surrender to this power because our way is not working. And that's the point I wanted to make before I brought you in before, Nadja, that sometimes we think when they talk about come to believe that we can be restored to sanity in step 2, I'm not saying at this point. I mean, I may be making better decisions than I was under the influence of alcohol. But the sanity, as we all know, the miracle of AA takes place at step 10. And it talks about it's the process. There's little mile markers throughout. They don't wait till we get to step 9 to give us these promises. We celebrate them. I don't know why they're any more important than the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, or the 10th, or 11th step promises. They're all pretty gigantic promises. I guess step 9 are the ones they don't think are extravagant. The rest of them are. I answered my own question. Here we go. Back to the book. Next, That means right after we made this decision, next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. I'm going to stop with that sentence for a moment, Nod. Why would I not attempt a house cleaning? Because when I call on God and enough of me is moved out of the way, he comes, just like Bill Wilson said, his impact on Bill was sudden and profound. Bill had an experience in Winchester Cathedral. He had needed God, wanted God, humbly offered himself, and God came. And then guess what happened? The world came back. The birds came and ate the seeds. Some were planted on rocks, some were planted on hard ground, and some were planted in good soil. Until we take an inventory, the seeds that are planted are not going to grasp root. The worldly clamors, mostly those within himself, and that's what it's telling us here. At this point, there's an invitation for this power to come in, and he's going to come. But we need to make room for his presence to give him his rightful place in our life, which is in our hearts, which is clouded with resentments and fear and judgment and prejudice, all the stuff we're going to find out about as we begin this process. We're just participating. He's not going to come in and clean the whole house himself. He needs a little help. He's going to conduct the move, and we're going to be the laborers, not out. Though our decision, step 3, was a vital, life-sustaining, and crucial, very important step, it could have little permanent, and we're looking for a permanent effect, a permanent relationship with God. Some folks call it permanent recovery. Permanent effect, unless at once, again, the previous word was next, now it's at once. 2 operative words having to do with timing, followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of, to look at and get rid of the things in us which have been blocking us from entry with this power, happiness, peace, contentment, stability, blocking us from everything. Our liquor was but a symptom. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. And I know what you're thinking there out in YouTube land. Well, it's just a symptom. Let me tell you something, it's a very big symptom. When I'm drinking, it's a real big symptom. On the last day of my drinking, it was the only symptom, and it's the only one in the book where it tells us that it's a subtle symptom. Remember that we deal with alcohol. We never underestimate the opponent's foe. As we talked about last week, I believe Daniel did not go back in the lion's den to get his hat when God set him free. Let's not go back in the bar and look at the bottles and tell them we won. Come on, Nod.
Well, what do you mean my liquor was just a symptom? I thought that was the medicine. Right. You know, there's another book out there that talks about some house cleaning and when certain things that block us from God or that blind us are driven out, they'll come back with 6 of their buddies. So we're going to make sure that we're going to clean this house out. We're going to move all these block boxes out the way that block us from the power of God. And we're going to go out there and we're going to keep filling this vessel, because we've got to keep that vessel filled. And we'll find out more about how we're going to do that a little later on. But I want to look here. Thanks for saying vital and crucial. Let's go look at some of those words. Vital. 2 more words, beautiful words that describe vital. Life-giving, essential. These steps are life-giving and essential to this program of recovery. Right? And throughout this paragraph, it explains in what manner, like physically, what manner this needs to look like. This is not a half, like a little effort. I remember my first inventory that I did. I just did half a page. I just scribbled down a couple of words, a couple of names. I didn't even bother with the columns. And when she asked me if I was done, I said, yes, I was done. And I was lying. But why do you think I had 0 effect in that first time? Because if we go over to page 58, this is a reminder, because that's what they were talking about now. If we go to page 58, and we look at that first paragraph, it mentions honest 4 times in one paragraph. And you know what? Bill doesn't even use other words for the word honest. He emphasizes honest, 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 honest. And how do we have to be honest? Rigorously. That means that we got to get sweaty faces, hearts beating. We got to get, this is hard work. Michelle's just come from gym. That's how it feels, guys. Flush cheeks, hard work. Sorry, newcomer, if you're sitting in there going, huh? Work? That's not for me. Half measures will avail you nothing. So let's get back into the book. There was something else that I just wanted to mention. Yeah, again, Bill made a reference. There are 3 references to time, but when this needs to be done: at once, launch, and the first one is next. So this is not a step a month, not a step a year. I hear some of that stuff and in my insides just go, they get all squiggly and wriggly and they don't feel good because it's not big book. The instructions are here. This is clear-cut instructions. Launching, that means pretty quick. I think there's some, what is it? The M5 Mockingbird is like 300 kilometers. I don't know. Bill, someone will Google it and tell me I was wrong, but I know it's really pretty fast. And yeah, the last thing, we had to get down to causes and conditions. We need to look at the things I do, the things I think, the things I believe that block me from God. And why? Why do I think these things? Why do I do these things? And why have I behaved this way? That is what we're going to do in step 4, because we need to unblock. We need to unpack this hoarded house that is just like filled to the rim. The windows are shut. There's no light coming in. There's no truth. There's nothing. And yeah, I love this. This is a little bit of soul surgery. We're about to all walk into some soul surgery here because we come into this program fractured. And all we're going to be doing now is bringing all of this back together again to who we really were when we started off right in the beginning. Children of God, lost. That's all. Thanks, Bill.
And you bring to mind a good point. I was not back there in 1937 to 39 when they wrote the book. Pages 60 to 66, what we just read, talks about step 3. As if there were really steps in this process. If this be the case, if the point is me turning my will and life over to the care of God because I'm destroying myself and it's unmanageable, whether I'm drunk or sober, whether I need something greater than me to restore me to sanity, then I'm going to seek this power because it tells me in the third pertinent idea that God could and would if he were sought. I believe that if there were the numbers were added after the fact, then I get it. But the point is, I haven't done anything yet but become convinced of more ideas. You convinced me in the first 3 chapters that I got this thing, or I'm convinced by the experience that you shared. In step 4, I'm convinced that I'm in need of a spiritual experience. Or, excuse me, chapter 4. In chapter 5 now, I'm becoming convinced that my life doesn't run by me, doesn't work, and now I'm sober. I'm in abstinence now. I'm convinced that I'm in collision. In and of myself, I produce confusion rather than harmony. I've got this chronic malcontent state of mind that I can't get rid of on my own. And now what I've done is I've come and I said a prayer, and you even let me pick my own prayer. If I don't like your words, I can choose mine. Then it tells me I may have had an experience at that step, that position of surrender, acquiesce, concession. But it just gave me another paragraph of a transition into what culminates or solidifies the third step decision. And here's what it says. We are done now with the instructions or the narrative for step 3, and we haven't done anything yet. Remember, they call the third step in what Nadja just read an idea. I'm expressing the idea. The first 2 steps are conclusions of the mind. Step 3 that we've done up to this point is an idea. Now we're going to put action to the idea to bring it to life. Faith without works is dead. Ideas without labor, fantasy. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. I will paraphrase, metaphorically speaking, an alcoholic which takes no regular inventory usually gets drunk. I'm going to tell you what we've discovered because we're going to get to it today. If we do this properly, we can be on step 10 this afternoon, because the simplicity of the step 4 to get some immediate relief and let God come in for the rest of my life, I can do what they attribute, which is to take, which they describe as a continuation, a regular inventory. If you have a regular shower, it may be once a day. Some of us can get away with 2 days. But a regular bathroom movement, bowel movement, that means you go every day. How about a regular inventory every day? Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-basing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock and trade. What are we working with? What's on the shelves? What's selling? What's not selling? What's rotting? What's taking up space? What's repelling our customers to even go in that portion of the store? Because me and Nadia talked about this. If I stay in the stink long enough, if I leave a dirty baby diaper in the garbage can long enough, I become accustomed to the smell. I wonder why the flies are over there a lot and why my neighbors don't want to come visit me anymore. But if I live in that filth long enough, it becomes a way of life for me. This is why we had to become convinced of so much that everyone else knew already. Everyone knew that my life run by me wasn't working. Everyone knew when I walked into a room, everyone wanted to fight. And when my brother walked in, they all want to hug and kiss. I don't bring harmony. I bring self, which is the opposition of this thing called love or God. So, stock and trade, one object is to disclose damage, which we've talked about. That box is broken. What we're going to do is have a, what do they call that when you put the TV on display at Walmart? A floor model. This is a floor model, 30% off. It may have some damages or unsaleable goods. They're not selling flip-top phones. In fact, Obama's giving them away in our country. I don't know who gives them away in yours. Now we got iPhones and Androids, and next thing you know, they'll have a phone installed inside your brain. To get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. If the alcoholic trying to have an experience, trying to stay sober, cannot fool himself about his values, his defects or lack thereof. All right, now go.
Thanks, Bill. So there's let's just picture. So there's going to be 3 things we're going to do here. We're going to play attorney, prosecuting attorney, defense attorney. That's what we're going to play during step 4. That's going to be some of the role playing we're going to do. And right now what we've done is we're all taking a stroll over to the evidence locker, and we are grabbing all those Ziploc bags of evidence of all the hurt, all the pain, all the tears, all the heartbreak that we can remember. Okay? And Bill said something very profoundly true, Nana. This work can get done in a couple of hours. But for the intents and purposes of this YouTube channel, we are going line by line in the big book. So we're unpacking and fleshing and having the time of our lives and taking 400-500 years to finish a page. But this work gets done really quickly. You can dial me, you can dial Bill. There's a couple of others in this room that take you through this work in an afternoon. It does not have to be done to, over days and days and days. Anyway, I digress. We're going now and we're unpacking all the evidence baggies, and what I said prior was that for some of those evidence bags, we don't recognize them. We don't think those are ours. Like Bill said, that dirty nappy that's stinking up the alley, we don't even see it. This is why we do it with an understanding friend, a spiritual advisor. It says there, or a wife. I do not recommend that. And then also I want to tell you something else. We're doing step 4 inventory now, but there's a little bit of They're alluding to something in step 5 here. They're saying that there's going to be a fact finding and a fact facing and discovering the truth. Because a lot of this we can't see ourselves. And when we take all of this evidence and the prosecuting attorney's files and the defense attorney's files, and we take it to a closed mouth friend in step 5, we start finding facts and we start having truths revealed to us. So this is a process. Don't get nervous. I've heard a lot of people, I know I've had the same. What if I don't remember everything? What if what if there's something I've forgotten? There's many of these throughout our journey in recovery. It is what is revealed to us at that time and what our sponsor will reveal to us when we're sitting with them, with the inventory across them. Thanks, Bill.
So real quick, step 3, if I get this effect, it's like having a grand opening for my business. The effect may be electric. They may be standing in line around the corner. If I don't take a regular inventory, what happens is this effect is lost and I'm going out of business. We still haven't done anything yet. I just realized that this is more of a transition period again between the prayer and the process. So it says we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock earnestly. First, and sometimes we miss this, and I do this, and it's almost like I know what my defects of character are before most of them, before I write down any resentments, any fear, any harms done to others. And here's what it says. I believe if they use the word first, that means first. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. I understand they're going to be disclosed through this process. But before I wrote down the first resentment, and you people on YouTube won't believe this, I'm obnoxious, I'm a bully, I'm arrogant, whatever it is that I am, I know going in what's wrong with me. Believe me, you can't fool me about that. It's been wrong with me all my life. In fact, I've done everything in my power to try and get rid of it on my own, and it won't budge. That's why it's so easy to go along with the instructions for step 3. So sometimes I will make a list of my grosser handicaps before I put down that I'm a resentment and see how the seediness of my decision-making process puts me in a position to be hurt. But going in, I know that there are some things that are wrong with me. Why? Because people have been telling me all my life. Rob, did I tell you what a guy told me once at about 90 days sober? He said, did your sponsor ever tell you you might want to shut up? Oh my God, I had to punch him in the face, but we exchanged phone numbers and I didn't have any friends. On the ride home that day, I thought to myself, my sponsor, people been telling me all my life, can't you keep your mouth shut? If my big mouth was my problem, though, cutting out my tongue or sewing my lips shut would be my solution. But my problem's internal. It stems from self and it comes out of my mouth. The problem's inside. They've been trying to quiet me externally all my life. And you hear in Alcoholics Anonymous, this is an inside job. Guess what? We're getting ready to go inside to clear away the stimulus for my need to open my mouth at all costs, without filter, all the time. You guys might not believe this, but believe it or not, sometimes throughout the day, I'm even quiet now. Okay, here we go. I don't need an opinion. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Another convincing, being convinced that self manifested in various ways was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestation. Now, do you remember in our last talk when we were reading the instructions about how the outgrowth of self, resentment, the decisions we based on self? And I said, sometimes I'll draw a line across a page. I know we have that on tape because we talked about it in one of the 2 preceding sessions we've done here. That the root of self, if selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our trouble, the roots are down underneath the ground. We talked about, I used the word fertilizers, they say driven. Yeah, we talked about it last week. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows. The stepping on the toes of our fellows are the manifestation of the outgrowth of self. I didn't really know what the word manifest meant till I asked someone. So what I do is I plant a seed of self into the ground. I fertilize it with fear and all the other driving forces. And what pops up is a whole bunch of flaws in my makeup, which poke into people all around me. I think it looks like a rose bush. They think it looks like a bunch of weeds and thorns. So I can't fool myself about values. I got to realize that although it's a rose bush, there's
Sure.
thorns everywhere. And guess what? There's weeds that go with it, or I wouldn't have to clean the garden and take the inventory. Okay, that's a paragraph in itself. Nadja, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Sorry, I didn't realize I had my audio on. I was just like blown away because my whole life I would give people roses because I'm the actor, right? I'm being gracious, I'm being ever generous, kind, considerate. But I'm doing that to get what I want. And I always had the analogy, I'd step on their toes and they'd retaliate. I'd give them roses and then they would react like, and I'd be like, what's wrong with you? You know, what's your problem? You never see the flowers that I give you. You just feel the thorns. And you just hit it on the nail on the head. Yeah. We took stock honestly. Bill just said, no, it's an inside job. And what we are going to ask you here, and if you're sponsoring and you're taking someone through this work now, that inside voice that says, I hate my mother, I hate her, I wish she'd just die, because then the problems would be all gone. Put that down on paper. Put it down on paper. That crazy inside voice that we don't let anybody hear what it actually is saying, the one that plots your ex-husband's murder to the finest degree, put it down. We are begging you for rigorous honesty. And it says here, we considered its common manifestations. Let's go have a look on page 54. Second paragraph. Look what it says here. I love this because the common manifestations Bill's talking about is things happen to us. We had a feeling, we had a feeling about what happened, and we built an entire lifetime on that one feeling, on that one time that we felt unloved by the bullies at school. That became our narrative, our old idea that drove our behavior. Fear, self-pity, resentment, driving us, mushing us through the snow till it was finished with us. Let's go look what it says here. In second paragraph, we're kind of like the fifth or sixth line down in that second paragraph. It says, did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? Not just a bad day, our existence. It was impossible to say we had no capacity. Sorry, that last line is what it's saying here is we have these feelings, we had something happen to us, there was a certain way we felt about it, and that became our belief system forever and ever, amen, till the point where we pursued this to the gates of insanity or death and ended up with our bums in these seats.
Just had another revelatory experience. We left out maybe the most important sentence in the preceding paragraph. It says one object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods. We talked about that. To get rid of them promptly and without regret. Why would I want to get rid of these things promptly? Rob, do you know if I look at a piece of garbage that I've held on as a hoarder long enough, it becomes valuable again? So what I've done is I've identified this as unsaleable. This is no good. Get rid of it before I can trick myself back into thinking that it has a future or a present value of it. Maybe I can discount it, still get 30 cents on the dollar. No, Bill Swan, it's been sitting there for 7 years. It bears no fruit. Let's get rid of it now for good and for all. Talks about, and what's the word they use? I don't want to misquote this. That's a powerful statement right there. Promptly. That means that's another time frame, Nadia. Promptly. Okay. Resentment. is the number one offender. It destroys. I'm sorry, go ahead, honey.
Sorry, my brother, I want to jump in here. There's an instruction there, and there's a bit of warning as well. It says, thanks, Bob, for picking that up. It says to get rid of them promptly and without regret. Those are the instructions. Because why is that an instruction? Let's go have a look at page 86. Here are our daily instructions. The disciplines that Bill mentioned in the beginning of the recording and the meeting, the disciplines of steps 10. In there are daily instructions that we take. Page 86, second paragraph. We must, third or fourth line down in the second paragraph. We must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. Why, guys? Why does it say that? Because it will diminish our helpfulness to others. And that's our main purpose. That's the reason we're alive. That's the reason we've been chosen. That's the way we have a daily reprieve. That is how all of us who are in this room, 14 of us, get to stay sober one day at a time. So we do not have the luxury, and they're going to talk about a lot of luxuries we don't have throughout the book. The grouch, the brainstorm, criticizing, never getting angry. We don't get the luxury of doing those things anymore. And it's telling us here again that we do not get the luxury of going into self-pity. Oh, well, I'm such a terrible mother. I've been such a terrible wife. I've been such a terrible ex-wife. I've been such... No, you get rid of that stuff promptly and without regret. That's an instruction, spearheads.
Took the liberty at one time, and I didn't want to misquote this, to look up the word offender. Someone who has violated a criminal, religious, or moral law. So what does that mean? Resentment's the number one offender. It's the thing that causes the most blockage. It's going to tell us what takes place between us and this power. If I violate a religious law, they call it a sin. We talked about fear being clashed with stealing. We're going to get to that probably next week. We probably won't get to fear, maybe not even for 2 weeks, maybe 3. But in the original manuscript, it says sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing as a sin. They took out as a sin because they didn't want to get the Catholics offended there. But nonetheless, why would it be a sin? Because God has really given none of us any place for the harms we do others, the resentments we harbor, or the fear that dominates our life. There's no place in us for it to exist. We're made in the image and likeness of our Creator, which is love, and self has consumed and taken over that position. This is why it seems to cause so much trouble. If fear was a sin, what if the 11th commandment that said, "Thou shalt not be afraid"? We already know that we're not supposed to resent or hate. It tells us that. In fact, if we do it enough deep inside, it calls murder in our heart. So we know that. In the immorality that comes from our sexual conduct, that was laid down in the top 10. But what if there was an 11th commandment that says, "Thou shalt not be afraid"? Every time that other book I read, someone from representing God comes along, guess what they said? Do not be afraid. Fear not. Don't be fearfully, sorely afraid. Why? Because when I'm into self and the presence of the Spirit comes along, I get very nervous. I don't know about you. So here we go. From it stem all forms of spiritual dis-ease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill. The doctor's opinion describes the mental conditions. The physical, from drinking excessively, it starts to destroy the body as well. We have been spiritually sick. Here's a condition, guys. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. They're about to come out of us now. We're bringing them out. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. That's the first instruction. We're going to make a grocery list. When we get onto the next page, it's going to give us the only picture in the book. It's a diagram. I call it a picture, it's certainly not a cartoon. We set them on paper. So I get a list. I've got a list of people, institutions, principles. People, mom, dad, sister, brother, John, Joanne, ex-wife, teacher. Institutions, Bank of America, the IRS, the Department of Corrections, Department of Child and Family Services, the church, our schools, institutions. You get the example. Principles. Principles are things that are constant. I might not agree with the concept that everything falls to the center of the earth at a certain speed. They give that the definition of the word gravity. I don't have to believe in it, but if I step off the second story building, I'm going to hit the ground very rapidly. That's going to happen every time in the atmosphere in which we live. That is a principle. Some principles that we've heard throughout the years. Children are to be seen and not heard. Women's places in the kitchen. Whatever it is that drives you crazy. You know, and my sister's on here, but I'm not going to put her out there. When someone tells me there's only one way to the Father, just like Bill Wilson, even though I probably agree, I bristle with antagonism because that seems to be a principle only issued or mandated by the people who have found that one way to the Father. The rest of us are, you know what I mean? They leave us out. Here comes Rabbi Joe. He might not agree with that. He might have another way to the Father. Nonetheless, those are the things we're listing on our grocery list. When you go shopping, you don't write the words along the page alongside of each other. You write a list down: eggs, bacon, milk. John, Mary, Dick, Jane, and Sally. That's what our list is going to be. That's the first instruction. We asked ourselves why we were angry. That would be our second column. The cause of our irritation, the cause of our annoyance, our disturbance. They use other words which don't always get picked up, but they're right there in black and white. I don't have to be resentful at someone if they threaten me. I might have a certain type of feeling towards them that is not of love or harmony. Anything that causes discomfort, I believe, should go on this list. In most cases, it was found that in column 3, our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up. You want to say anything about that? It's a big
Yeah, I do.
paragraph,
Thank you.
but it's really leading into the instructions. Go ahead, if you will.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. It kills us, and we must be rid of this. And we've heard this before. We've heard this death threat about resentments, and I'm just again going to rehash that. Bill or the writers here, they make no bones about doing this work. They make no bones about what resentment, the business of resentments, mean to the alcoholic. But here's a beautiful, so we've been like at you guys tonight. It's been instruction time and towing the line and plain soldier boot camp. But let's give you a promise. Let's give you a nice little promise. It says here, for those that are sitting in this room, you've always had a stiff neck, or you always have that one gummy ear that just doesn't want to hear, or you're always struggling with sinusitis or something. There's something that's been ailing you for as long as you can remember. Well, guess what? Guess what? It is going to be overcome. It is going to be overcome. It says here, right in the middle of this paragraph at the bottom of page 64, when the spiritual malady, let's just refresh our memories. Let's go to Roman numerals XXVIII. That's page 28 in the doctor's opinion. If you don't want to, because it takes too much PT to find that page, it's all good. I'll read it to you. This is alcoholic men and women, are restless, irritable, discontent, unless they can at once experience the ease and comfort of taking that first drink. That is, my friends and family, the spiritual malady. And when that is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. Some of us are on some, and I'm not a properly appointed authority, but I have seen this with my own eyes when I take people through this work. By the time they're rocking and rolling in step 6 and 7, there's some crick in their neck that is straightened out. They're starting to come off their meds. The migraines have stopped. I don't know. That's my experience, and apparently the book tells us that's what happens too. So get your promise highlighter out and make a nice big highlight that, bold it. That is a straight up promise. I was in these rooms for 3 years. I'd been injected in my face. I'd had scans, sonars, you name it. I had a neck that was immobile. While I was in these rooms for 2 years, I'd thank God for Zoom. I could just look at you guys. I didn't have to look at anybody else. And my sponsor promised me that this would be a promise that we would come back to after I'd got through my step 5. And as you can see, I ain't got no more problems. Just saying. I just wanted to share my experience, strength, and hope there.
Call for an urgent group conscience and make a motion that we conclude this portion of the recording today, and what we do next week, believe it or not, is start back with this paragraph, dealing with resentments, and we'll get, this is a real important part of the book. It can almost be confusing because there's so much in there and it's really simple. So if the rest of, if I can get a second on the motion, Nadia, and we'll take a group conscience. Rob voted and Ollie said yes by a nod of hands. Either that or they're like that little chihuahua in the back of the car just bopping up and down.